Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Trumful Reads, and in this video I'm going to do the other half of my February book haul. As I said before, in case you didn't see the other video, all my books were divided into two nice piles. I guess you could say two different series that I picked up in the month of February. Picked up a bunch of Horus Heresy books from eBay, and then at a salvage store where they had bought out a bunch of books from a bookstore that went out of business or something. They had a whole stack of these very short introduction books, and I had about 30 or 40 in my hand, and I was like, I really can't justify, even if they're half off or whatever it happened to be, I can't really justify buying that many, so I went down to eight books, as you can see here. So I thought that was really cool. I just really enjoy these very short introductions and trying out new subject matters and all kinds of stuff like that. So, like I said, I'll just go over these ones real quick. And like I said, there's 8 of them, and I just kind of put these all in their own video just because, they're all very short introductions, so it'd be just easy. Alright, so let's see. We got 4... No, I lied. We got 5 history ones and then 3 that aren't history. So let's start with the ones that are not history. Alright, first up is Epicureanism, a very short introduction by Catherine Wilson. Epicureanism, if you guys don't know, is kind of like a branch of philosophy. It gets a really bad rap, basically because everyone kind of equates it with hedonism, which is not really what Epicureanism is at all. Epicurus was a Greek philosopher in the mid-4th to mid-3rd centuries BCE, I believe, but it kind of gets a bad rep because everyone thinks it's all about maximizing pleasure and stuff, which is kind of true, but I think it's more actually about limiting one's pain and fear in their life. And instead of kind of the hedonistic sort of mindset that most people believe Epicureanism is, it's actually more of living a simple life where you don't have tons of desires and wants and stuff, and you just basically meet your basic needs and don't have desires for everything else, and then you're not worried about losing stuff, fear and pain, all that kind of good stuff, I think. So that's why I picked up Epicureanism, just to make sure I see if I can get a better understanding of this branch of philosophy. The next one is another philosophy work, and it's Metaphysics by Stephen Mumford. And Metaphysics is one of the main branches of philosophy, and basically asks the question, what? Essentially what is, kind of that sort of stuff. And I don't really have a firm grasp on it, to be honest. A lot of philosophers kind of deal with it. I've just never, I think I've read 2 or 3 other books on metaphysics, but if I remember, it was during college, and I just kind of rushed through them really fast for a paper or something, so I retained absolutely nothing from it. But so that's why I picked up Metaphysics, so I can obviously not even really brush up, basically just start over with my learning of metaphysics. Alright, and the last one that is not a history related very short introduction is Autism, and this one is by Uta Frith. I want to say Firth, but it's Frith. And the reason I picked this one up is that in my work, my day-to-day work life, I work with children and adults lots of times who have autism. And I just figure I read a lot of books, but I don't really read that much on mental health or any of those kind of allied subjects or fields. And I think I should just start reading more on those topics on my own initiative and see if I can try to learn more and more and apply it in my work life. So that is why I picked up Autism by Uta Frith. Alright, so now we have a bunch of history ones. I feel like I've been slacking off on my history. I always say that, which I think is because when I go on a kick of memoirs and sciences and fantasy and stuff, I always feel like I'm neglecting history, and it's all my history books are basically just cursing me when I'm not around. But let's just, so I think that's probably why I subconsciously ended up with 5 out of 8 direct history ones. The first one is the Napoleonic Wars by Mike Report. And the Napoleonic era, or the age of Napoleon, is going to be a subject that I want to start learning about this year. And like I've said in previous videos, if you guys have followed the channel, once I hit about the Renaissance age, or the era of the Renaissance, I kind of start to drift and tail off all my history studies, and anything after 1500 just kind of, besides World War I, gets kind of left out. But at the beginning of the year, I was like, I need to find some eras or topics or whatever that I want to like learn more about. And I think the Napoleonic Age is going to be one of the major topics that I want to study. And partly it's because a lot of the fantasy that I read is flintlock fantasy, which kind of takes inspiration from the age of Napoleon, like the Napoleonic era. So I think that's kind of why I'm going with that. And plus, it really was a critical junction in European history, especially. And so yeah, that's why I'm going to start reading some books, either about Napoleon or like kind of like the Napoleonic Age, the turn of like the 19th century, yeah, 1800 or so, around that era. So that's why I went with the Napoleonic Wars. The next one is The Middle Ages by Miri Rubin, and basically I just picked this one up because it's the Middle Ages, and I really enjoy reading medieval histories, though I think that is probably the era I stocked off the most in last year. I think I did really good with classical history. Now, I guess ancient history is probably like the one I slacked off the most in, but I saw the Middle Ages and I was like, I just got to get the short introduction to the Middle Ages. Alright, the next one is The Habsburg Empire by Martin Rady, and I also like the color scheme on this one. I mean they all have the same sort of design, but just kind of like this one is just, I like the teal on the top there. But yeah, the Habsburg dynasty, I know a little bit because it kind of starts in the late Middle Ages, but it kind of goes on and on and on, almost until like the early modern era. I guess the modern era, past almost the early modern era. But anyways, the Habsburg dynasty pretty much controlled most of like the Western world for like hundreds of years, just because their family and like marriage alliances was like so vast. But I don't know really too much about it because a lot of it, like I said, takes place in kind of like the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, which I don't read too much on. So I thought this would be kind of a good introduction to kind of like the whole couple of centuries in a way. So we'll see about this one. Alright, the next one is actually one I don't know. I'm not excited for, but I guess I'll just explain in a second. It's Alexander the Great by Hugh Bowden, and it's a character, a figure I don't actually have any books on, which will probably surprise you, just because I have, like I said, a ton of classical, ancient Greek and Roman works, and lots of biographies as well. But Alexander the Great is a figure I do not like from classical history. I think there's so many books about him that at some point what I'm going to do is probably just get like 5 or 6 and just read them all at the same time and get it over with, and that way I can make like comparisons and everything. But Alexander the Great is not one of my favorite characters from history. He's actually one of my least favorite characters from history. That's like a major, super important figure. And, I just thought this would be kind of a good place to start. I'm going to try and go in with like a blank slate, tabula rasa or whatever, and start to format my own, like start new opinions about Alexander the Great. But yeah, I know that's kind of controversial in some camps, but I think he was just a megalomaniac punk. And yeah, so there's Alexander the Great, a very short introduction. And lastly, kind of this one is just like in the Middle Ages. It's Ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. I don't know how many books I've read on Ancient Greece. Probably like, it's got to be in the dozens at least. I mean, I guess if it's just like kind of like a history of ancient Greece, more like probably a dozen or like 7, 8, 9, something like that. So I don't really need to read it, but I just like saw Ancient Greece, a very short introduction. I was like, I can't really go wrong with that one. This one's by Paul Cartledge, and I've actually read some other books by Paul Cartledge. I read, like, I think, what did he have? The Spartans I read, and I think he has one on Thermopylae, and he has just another one. I have something right there. It's just called The Greeks. But anyways, like I said, this one I basically just saw, Ancient Greece, a very short introduction. I was like, I might as well pick that one up if I'm picking up the Middle Ages. So that's kind of why I went with Ancient Greece. Now, I just think all these are really cool. Like, when you put them all together, it's just a really cool, like, little book series I found. They're not all great. There are some kind of, like, duds in there. But I think overall, anyways, they're a good way to, especially if it's a topic that's, like, brand new to you, it's just a good way to get, like, a nice bite-sized piece of information on that topic. And what I also like about these introductions is lots of times it's not like the approach you would always normally take, if that makes sense. Like, for example, let's see, like, of course now I'm like drawing a blank, like plants, for example. It doesn't just kind of go over like what you would think plants are, like just kind of just the scientific stuff of plants. Like, it kind of goes over, like, it does do that a little bit, and then kind of goes over, like, the evolution taxonomy of plants, then the science behind plants, then, like, cultural uses of plants, and then, like, the ways we're trying to preserve plants for posterity, like the conservation and stuff. So it kind of covers all kinds of stuff on that topic, not just kind of like a little narrative chronological history of whatever the topic is, if that makes sense. I haven't read too many history ones per se, so I don't know if the history ones are going to be exactly, just kind of like just straight narrative histories, but like I said, lots of times they take really cool, not what am I thinking, not detours, but they look at like really strange, I don't know, they just take really unique ways to looking at the different facets of a topic rather than just kind of what you would expect the main narrative to be. So that's kind of why I like these very short introductions, and overall I definitely enjoy them. And like I said, there are a couple duds in there, but I think that's obviously going to happen when you have a book series of what they're at, like 500. Yeah, that one's, Habsburg is like 515. I think that's one of the newest ones I have. So they're in the 500s now. So obviously there's going to be a few bad apples. But overall, I really enjoy the series. I encourage you guys to check it out if you want to basically learn about a topic, because chances are they have something either on that topic or kind of like related to it, with 500 titles covering all sorts of stuff. I highly encourage you guys to go check those out. And no matter what you end up reading, always remember, read victoriously.